nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut. Today we'll go bird watching, tomorrow we'll catch toads. The next day we'll take photographs of bugs along the road. I never get the feeling that I'm in a rut. That's why I'm a nature nut. Well, I'm a nature nut, I'm not afraid to admit. I'm wild about the wild things and I'm proud of it. I'm just a simple case, open and shut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.
Well, hello there, nature nuts. Today we have a very serious topic before us, you know. I've always been interested in wilderness and nature, the creatures that inhabit nature. But when I was a kid, you know, I was browsing through the library. I came upon some books that have influenced me to this very day. Bizarre books. Like this one, Abominable Snowman, Legend Come to Life by Ivan Sanderson. Bernard Heuvelmann's On the Track of Unknown Animals. Stories of normal people like you and me who encountered strange creatures in the wilderness. Three-toed sloth, abominable snowman, mutzelworm. Do they exist? That's our question for today. And to answer it, I've gone deep into monster country, and I'm here with an open mind.
Numerous expeditions to the Congo Basin of Africa in search of a living dinosaur have come back without a single shred of proof.
Kind of a spooky place. Makes you wonder. You know, I've heard magicians find scientists to be the easiest people to fool because all you have to do is lead them along a nice straight line of reasoning and they'll believe just about anything. I think that's what happened to me. I used to be a real keen monster believer. My favorite monster was the Sasquatch, the Bigfoot, the giant hairy hominoid that stalks the woods of our land. You know. And it made perfect sense to me, and I'll tell you why. I was quite convinced. Even if there isn't a Sasquatch around now, there was a very Sasquatch-ish creature a mere 500,000 years ago. Let me show you a cast of a fossil that was found in China. This is the front of the lower jaw of Gigantopithecus blackeye. The back part of the jaw is missing. It's called blackeye not because it had a black eye, because it's named after Davidson Black, a famous Canadian scientist. And look at this thing. I mean, my lower jaw is about that deep. Look at how deep this thing is. Huge. That is a single molar tooth. Huge. And not only that, it might have stood on two legs like a person. Nobody knows. All we have are jaws and teeth. Can you imagine how high it would have stood? Whoa. One big critter. Excellent. And not only that, between then and now, North America and Asia were connected from time to time over what is now the Bering Sea, a little land bridge. They could have just walked across, found themselves at home in the Pacific Northwest in these wonderful lush forests. I was totally convinced. And so was my physical anthropology professor. He told our class about 16 years ago that there would be two big developments in the field. First of all, lots of new fossils found in East Africa to shed light on the origin of humanity. And secondly, somebody was going to get a Sasquatch. Well, they did find lots of great fossils in East Africa. That's been coming true. But 16 years later, here we are. No Sasquatch. Might have been wrong. My faith is beginning to crumble.
Like science fiction, monster stories start out with a scientific premise and then cleverly shift into fantasy and messy logic.
At approximately 3:52, yeah, well, no, that was about 5 minutes ago, so maybe. At approximately 3:48 p.m., I was proceeding north on secondary road 215 at about approximately 40 kilometers an hour, because, well, that's the speed limit. Of course I was. And I saw a large brown subject moving across the road. Now, this subject passed in front of my car approximately, how far would that be? I just meant five, at approximately 5 yards, so that's 350. Approximately 15 feet in front of my car. Now, I could not make out what the subject was exactly, but it was definitely brown and furry, long striding lopes, brown and furry. Geez, it could have been a deer.
You know, most of the so-called evidence for the Sasquatch comes from eyewitness reports, and we tend to find eyewitness reports very compelling because, you know, seeing is believing after all.
The subject definitely was brown and furry and had a human-like walk or gait, as you might say. Gait's probably a better word, it's a little nicer. And it proceeded across the road, down the ditch, and into this area near the swamp. At that point, I got out of my car and tried to pursue the subject through the bush, but it moved so fast that I couldn't get to it, and I got stuck in the mud. But anyway, the thing about this is I think we're going to have to get a committee together because I can't seem to think of any regulations or permits or anything that would cover this subject, and it's kind of annoying. And the thing is, we're going to have to get some regulations on this because you just can't have subjects like this, brown and furry, about, I guess it was about 6.
The fact of the matter is, human perception, it's not like a camera. Your brain processes information. Sometimes your brain gets mixed up. We're all like that.
Yeah, about 6 to 7 feet tall, and you can't have subjects like that just running around in the bush. So we're going to have to get a parliamentary committee or something working on this to determine what exactly it is and how we're going to regulate it. Yeah.
For a while, there were stories of a giant bird flying around Texas. Lately, they have ceased. Perhaps it flew away.
Okay, I know what you're saying. What about the footprints? Certainly footprints have to be evidence of something. This is a replica of a cast of a very famous Sasquatch footprint, and they are evidence of something. They're evidence that the ground has been pressed down, squished by something. And you might want to ask yourself, what kind of forces can squish ground in the shape of a Sasquatch footprint? Well, the truth is there are people on this planet with very large feet, and they sometimes don't wear shoes and walk in the wilderness. That's one possibility. There are also bears. You know how bears are? They have one big hind foot, well, two actually, but on one side one, and a small front foot. Sometimes they'll put the print of the hind foot and the print of the front foot like this, and they form a kind of a Sasquatchy looking composite print, and you might not notice the claw marks at the front. There are also people who like to fake Sasquatch footprints, and some of these people have admitted that they've faked prints, even very famous Sasquatch footprints. Of course, that doesn't mean that there's no possibility that there might be real ones, but I'll tell you what, I'm mostly concerned that Sasquatch footprints are not well documented. So if you find a set of footprints in the wilderness, I'm going to show you what to do. I just created some footprints down here. Come and have a look. Yeah, pretty authentic looking, eh? You know how we made these? Actually, they're pretty unsophisticated. That's a track maker. Works like a darn. If you find Sasquatch tracks, measure each and every one. Measure the length. That's 44 centimeters. You got that? You writing this down? The width, maximum width, about 18 centimeters. And then photograph, not just, you know, one or two of the best looking tracks, but every single track. Get a good photograph. Like I say, photograph each one, measure each track. Here's another one here. You'll want to measure the distance between the tracks, the stride, and then you want to come back and plaster cast each and every one of them, because after all, I mean, this is a major scientific discovery, right? What's wrong with a little rigor, a little documentation? And you can go all the way. Hold on 1 second. Oh, what the heck's going on here? I didn't make this one. That's a much better looking track, too.
If you add up the book, film, magazine, logo, and tourism dollars, the monster industry is probably worth billions every year.
Okay, and what about the other sort of evidence for monsters and Sasquatches in particular? The photographic evidence. After all, the camera does not lie. Or does it? Well, for Sasquatches, there's one very famous piece of film, the Patterson film. It was shot in California in the 60s. It shows this big, hairy, kind of female Sasquatch walking down a creek bed. And many experts have analyzed it. Some actually believe that it's a genuine film of a real living Sasquatch. It's kind of hard to say, really. It just looks like a big, hairy gal walking on a creek bed to me. But I asked Dimitri, our local movie monster costume making expert, his opinion. Here's what he told me.
Well, after I first saw the tape, I thought to myself, what does a real Sasquatch look like? I mean, nobody really knows what a Sasquatch looks like. It's not like we've come across them like we do bears and moose in the woods when we're camping. So the first thing I thought to myself from looking at the costume was where I had seen that type of a costume before. And what came into my head was Planet of the Apes. I mean, those are the kinds of cheesy costumes that were going around at that time. So we can't really say that was a real Sasquatch. I mean, nobody can really prove it. But that's what it looked like to me. It looked like one of those female ape costumes you can order from a costume catalog type of thing. You know, if I myself was to go about building one, I would probably be looking at adding mass to the person, you know, putting a muscle suit over top of them, and then going from a drawing to see what type of a look we want for the Sasquatch. You know, maybe more of a Harry and the Hendersons friendly, or of a realistic, more of a scientific look to it. You know, I would probably start off by looking at the sketch, you know, adding the muscle suit and the mask to the person, fabricating the fur, and going and sculpting the face and casting it out of gypsum, and then, you know, making it out of latex. Something similar to, you see, our little friend the hand here is made out of a very, very similar material, you know, different grades for different things. I myself do a lot of accident simulation and even straight makeup, you know, like the things you see in photography and on the runways at fashion shows. But the accident simulation and the costume end of it, you know, if you have the resources and the skills and the time to do it, anybody can recreate that type of a video and get the particular look that they want. I mean, to me, looking at that video, it strikes me as very cheesy, and it just makes me laugh, you know, because it is funny. It's like watching, you know, old episodes of Doctor Who. You know, those costumes were not very convincing, and to me, neither was the one in the Patterson tape.
I feel compelled as well to tell you that, you know, in order to show you those still photographs from the Patterson film, we had to pay money, which means that means a couple of things. It means the film wasn't exactly donated to science when it was made, which, you know, judge that as you will. It also means that there is money to be made with crummy pictures of Sasquatches, which is why I always carry a crummy camera when I'm in Sasquatch country. This creek bed, it looks real good. It looks just like Bluff Creek in California. What about explanations that have more to do with human culture and less to do with zoology? After all, you know, most cultures, they have some kind of boogeyman, like werewolves or vampires. Things that make you huddle a little closer to the campfire. My sister and I, we used to believe there was this thing called the grape man that lived in our house. He was a little guy about this high with a big grape-shaped head. He lived in the dishwasher and only came out at night. Very scary. The grape man. The Sasquatch could be a bogeyman too. And, you know, that's the sort of explanation that most scientists favor because it's more parsimonious. Parsimony means that it fits better with what we already know about people and animals and nature, and it makes fewer wacky assumptions. Most of the monster believers, they think that there's real scientists, that they're covering up the evidence, that they're trying to suppress the truth. Most scientists I know, they would be delighted if there was a Sasquatch. Delighted. It would be really good news. They just don't think it's likely to happen because it's not very parsimonious.
I used to play with all my friends, with all the forest denizens, with grizzly bears I'd kid around. I'd laugh with mooses, then look down. But now my pals have gone away. No longer do we run and play. As I grew near, they'd sneer and gasp. Now I'm alone in the forest vast. 'Cause I got big feet. I always used to think it was neat. Yeah, I'd love to fit in, but they don't want me. Yeah, I'm the one with big feet. One day I spied an animal on two legs like me, standing tall. Reached out my hand to make a friend. She screamed and ran, didn't mean to offend. I guess it's 'cause I got big feet. I always used to think it was neat. I'd love to fit in, but they don't want me, 'cause I'm the one with big feet. Now back into the woods I stride. Without a friend, I'll have to hide. When you're out there, be on watch. You might see me, the old Sasquatch.
Let's talk about lake monsters for a moment. You know, it seems that every large lake has a monster story, its own particular kind of monster. If you think about it, lake monsters are probably the most widespread common freshwater organisms on this planet, and yet we have absolutely no proof of their existence. The most famous one is the Loch Ness Monster in Scotland. If you want the inside story on the Loch Ness Monster, here's my favorite Loch Ness Monster book, The Loch Ness Mystery Solved by Ronald Binns. Great book. Ronald Binns is what you might call a skeptic, and he took the time to look into the Loch Ness Monster story. He traced it back to a single newspaper article in 1933. Man and his wife, they're passing by the lake. They see this huge, horrible thing cavorting in the water, splashing and looking like a monster. And, well, turns out, in actuality, that the guy was driving. He didn't see anything, and his wife, after reflecting on it, thought that maybe she'd seen a couple of ducks fighting. And it builds, it becomes a media event, and now it's a small industry over at Loch Ness. Kind of interesting. That's what you call skepticism. This is my favorite skeptical magazine, the Skeptical Inquirer. Full of articles written by scientists who take the time to examine the evidence for these peculiar claims. And it's quite amusing what they find. They never really find peculiar things, at least they haven't so far. Most of the time they find people who are either mixed up or they're just simply lying. Anyway, great magazine, The Skeptical Inquirer. Very important to keep an open mind. There's a difference between skepticism and cynicism. Keep an open mind, examine the evidence. If we were looking for a lake monster, well, there's a good example right now. If we were looking for a lake monster, that kind of looks like a head floating out there, like a plesiosaurus. Well, let's just examine the evidence. Driftwood. Good thing we checked the evidence. That's science in action. Mere driftwood.
One famous home video of a Canadian lake monster turned out to be nothing more or less than a beaver.
So are there monsters roaming about in these wildernesses, or aren't there? I don't know. I don't think anyone can say for sure without a little bit better evidence. But for the moment, my opinion is let's all get a good sleep tonight. Don't worry about the grape man and the boogie man. I just don't think they're out there. Ah! Behind every scary legendary monster, there's always gonna be a perfectly logical, probably friendly explanation.
Whew!
That's a wrap. Let's go for coffee.
Oh, good. Double cappuccino?
Double cappuccino. Good plan.
Hot in here.
It looks hot.
Same time each and every week, uncensored and uncut. No doubt about it, I'm a nature nut.